right, thank you all for coming. This is session 3 of our Navigating New Norms Generative AI short course. This session is all about hands-on experiences and applications and basically learning the best practices for making use of generative AI. Just as a reminder, these are our sessions. So we are on our 3rd session, our hands-on experiences. Our final session will be next week about employing generative AI in libraries. But for now, I'm excited to introduce Michael Flierl, who's an associate professor and student learning librarian at the Ohio State University Libraries. His research investigates how students can more intentionally, creatively, and ethically use information and data to learn. Michael has recently explored dual-use foundational AI models, consulting on AI for the Department of Defense, and presenting on AI to the Ohio State University Senate, the Ohio State University's College of Medicine, and international conferences. He's published in College and Research Libraries, the Journal of Academic Librarianship, and Library and Information Science Research. Michael is currently a fellow at the Institute for Information Literacy at Purdue and the Special Issues Editor for References Services Review. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing and let him take it over. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks so much, Peace. That was a generous introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And if I could just get confirmation from y'all that you can see it, I'd really appreciate that. See some chat. Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so as Peace said, today we're going to be hands-on. We're going to be working with models. It's point of emphasis for me for dealing with AI that you have to use it. I think it was Ethan Mollick came up with this concept of the jagged edge. Whoops, I'm not even on my intro slide. Okay, there we go. Ethan Mollick, who's a great AI person to follow, and there's a link to their Substack later in my slides, but said that there's a jagged edge for generative AI models. And what he meant by that was it could be really good in one area, but in an adjacent area, it could be really poor. And that the only way to kind of know where that jagged edge kind of lies is through practice and use. So that's kind of the impetus for today's session and my entire approach here today. I'm going to give you a couple different activities and prompts, and hopefully you will have multiple opportunities to play AI, to explore and to experiment with it. That's kind of the overarching goal. And also, I do, just to emphasize what Peace said, I do want this to be interactive, collaborative. If you have a burning question, if you're having an issue and you want to talk about it, please do so. I do want this to be engaging, to address questions. I can't promise I'll have answers, but hopefully I do intend to be provocative and to get you moving and shaken and interacting with this new technology. So, okay, that's enough there. The general scope will be, we'll do an activity. I'll task you to do things. We're only going to do this twice. We'll reflect, debrief on it. So I'll give you like 10, 15 minutes for the activity. We'll do a debrief, however long that takes. We'll do that. We'll do the one activity to compare different models and another activity to really kind of get our hands dirty with prompt engineering techniques, ideally more sophisticated ones. And by the end, you will have kind of ideally a long, sophisticated prompt to use for something that would be relevant to your interests. Or so that's kind of the goal here. I'll give some resources at the end, things I suggest checking out: YouTube videos, Substacks, etc., readings, and then we'll also have time for Q&A as well. So if anyone has any burning questions as I get into the first activity, please throw them in the Q&A. I do want to be responsive. Questions come up all the time. I get it. I want to be here for everyone. Okay, but without further ado, all right, we're 3 minutes ahead of time here. So without further ado, the goal here will be to explore different models. So I'm going to throw in, well, not just yet. I'm going to throw in a couple different models, and I believe you all have talked about these. So there's Claude.ai, There's ChatGPT, there's Gemini, Google's Gemini, and Microsoft Copilot. Those are different models. You can use whatever models make sense to you for this activity. I am going to walk you through one in particular, Hugging Face, one website that will help you compare different models really easily. Okay, so this is huggingface.co/chat. You can enter in as a guest. I'll refresh here. And hopefully the same pop-up will come. We'll see. No, okay, well, if you go there, there'll be a pop-up. It'll say try as guest, and you could do that. I recommend this because this website, because it gets access to open source models. And you can try out different models on the same web page really easily. You do that by clicking on this cog. I'll zoom in. You click on this cog, and then there's a bunch of different models that you can choose. So I might recommend Mistral, depending on how you activate it. And then in the application settings here, you click on that, and then I prefer to click this off just so that your data doesn't get sent back to the companies or to Hugging Face. So X out. So now I am using. I wonder why I didn't save that. Oh, you have to click activate. That's why. Okay, so now I'm dealing with Mixtral, for instance. So if you want to compare two different generative AI systems really quickly and easily, I recommend this website. And before we get started proper, I'm curious what everyone's best guess, put in the chat if you would, their best guess for how many open source models there are available. I shouldn't say large language model. Generative AI open source models. Put in the chat, how many do you think are on this website? You'll see here, I'll go to Hugging Face website. This is kind of like a GitHub for generative AI. And you'll see here, there's 602,000 currently open source models, which is pretty bonkers. And you'll see here, there's a variety of different types. There's computer vision, there's image to text, document question answering, natural language processing, audio, text to speech, etc. Many of which are based off of Llama. That is Meta's or Facebook's open source model. But I find that to be kind of a funny thing to point out. So I think that's kind of incredible too. So the activity specifically is the pick two different models, and I'm going to copy and paste the specific instructions. I'm going to ask that you use a specific prompt. You can modify this if you want. I'm going to throw it up in chat. Rebecca asks, how many of them are variations of one of the big ones? The vast majority. That would definitely be the case. There's probably something on the order of hundreds of relatively unique ones, but the one like Llama just tends to outperform so many others. Okay, so I just put in a simple prompt, okay? And the goal for the next 10, 15 minutes, we'll check in at a certain point, is to use this prompt, and it includes putting in a term there, medical topic X here. So put in something relevant to your interests or your perspective or what have you, and then compare and contrast how the two models perform. Please go back and forth. I highly recommend asking for clarification. Hey, I need more information on here. I'd like you to format the information this way. If you looked at the pre-work, you can use some of those. But that's the goal here, is to compare and contrast different models. We'll be curious, will you get similar outputs? Will you get very different outputs? And if we can answer why that is or is not the case, you will ideally get some insight into these different models and learn how to use them more effectively. So I'll give us 10, 15 minutes for this. Is there any questions before we get, can we choose any two models? Yes. The point is use whatever two models you like. You're familiar with Claude and ChatGPT, use those two. You feel like exploring different models, go ahead and use Hugging Chat to pick two different models. Hugging Chat is kind of a repository. The question is, what is Hugging Chat? 4. Hugging Chat allows you, it's kind of a repository for generative AI systems, kind of like a GitHub, and people post their models on there for you to use. And Hugging Chat is a specific like website subdomain of Hugging Face, and it basically just allows you to easily interact with those open source models, different open source models really easily. It's just a tool to interact with different large language models more easily. Oh, and then can you demonstrate putting in a query in Hugging Chat? I picked them out, but I don't see where to put the prompt. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to pick, this is, we'll do Mixtral, or I'll pick a different one. You click activate. So now this is the active model. I'm going to click application settings, make sure I don't share conversations with model authors, but X out. And at the bottom of the page, this is where I would put my query. So glaucoma or something like that. And then ideally, there should be an output. Let's see how long this takes. Looks like it's working. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than others. I'm not sure what could be slowing this down. I would probably give this another 30 seconds. If it doesn't go, then I would stop and try to. I would pick a different model. Okay, so I'm going to go back to chat. How do you get to the prompt ask box again? Everyone's playing with Hugging Chat right now, so it's slowing down. That's probably true. How do you get to the my page looks very different. Interesting. It could be that the theme is different. Interesting. Well, how about this? Everyone could get started. I'll give 15 minutes, so we'll check back in as a group at 2:30. And in the meantime, you can meet me. In the meantime, I'll work on troubleshooting Hugging Chat for other folks. Interesting. I don't know why your Hugging Chat screen is different. So this is the website I'm going to. I don't know if it's a different website. It's .co, not .com. Maybe that's it. I'm going to try as a guest. Yes. Yep. Okay. Okay. So apologies about that. So once you're there, you click on the cog. Yep, I'll put it in there again. You click on the cog, say I want Mixtral. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hit activate. I'm going to go to application settings. It's not going to share with the authors. And then I'm going to X out. And then the prompting, this would be where I prompt.
Michael, there's a question. When using these tools, do you actively use multiple models simultaneously or default primarily to one model?
Interesting. I typically use multiple at the same time because one might hallucinate really badly over X. And so if you have 3 different models going at the same time, in theory, you'd be able to get to pick and choose. There's also something, I forgot what it's called. There's a specific term for it where you use, it might be, oh boy, something like compression or something like that, where you take the output of one model, you paste it into another, and you say improve this in a certain way. So you can kind of like daisy chain them as well. I tend to avoid overusing one model because they all have different, even now, especially like ChatGPT 4 was the best, the cream of the crop, but now Claude.ai has kind of gotten into that, is about as good as that. It depends on different benchmarks, the different tests. And then you might argue Google's Gemini has improved. So they're all kind of in the same ballpark, but as you might have seen from the first course, from the first class, what data the models are trained on has an impact on the output. How they were fine-tuned has an impact. So I would strongly recommend using multiple generative AI systems. You kind of have to think of it differently. It's not like Google where there's like a dominant online search. Ideally, you try different models, you get the different outputs, and then you compare and contrast. Thanks for highlighting that piece.
Sure. And there's actually one more question. Do you think that librarians should disclose if we use generative AI for brainstorming terms for systematic reviews?
Oh boy, are we going to get into the ethics of this already? We're only 30 minutes in.
Right.
Yeah, I advocate for transparency. So I think the Society of American Archivists just came out with the whole couple paragraph long thing saying AI is acceptable to be used, but you have to be transparent. No, it can't be a co-author, but yes, it could be used. We will accept conference presentations and papers for its publications given X, Y, and Z. I know different instructors on Ohio State campus have very different ideas about what is or what is not acceptable generative AI use. So some want students to use generative AI because they think it's the future, and so they may as well start now to prepare for their future careers. Other instructors say, hey, you have to learn how to think and to write if you're going to evaluate the output of LLMs appropriately. So personally, I prefer to disclose everything and how I use large language models. So that would include like, yes, transparency in saying I did use it. And then two, I provide my prompt, I copy and paste, copy and paste basically all of the text that I generated with the LLM, including my original prompt, basically as an appendix, just in case anyone wanted to know what I did and how I did it. For me, I think it depends on where we kind of land in academic library land, I guess, and that might even be different within medical librarianship. But from what I've seen, one common thread for the ethics of generative AI use is transparency. So that's what I would advocate for. So Meredith noted that she got very similar results between ChatGPT 4 and Mixtral, just formatted differently. So that doesn't surprise me necessarily because they're likely trained on similar data sets. The models are different, the neural network architecture is different. Interesting, it's a smaller model that kind of punches above its weight. But it's very possible for these different models, they have different names, you have to go to different websites, but if they're all trained on very similar data, it's perfectly possible for them to have quite similar outputs. There's also the difference between free models and paid models. Generally speaking, the paid models, Claude Opus, ChatGPT 4 or 4 Turbo, will outperform open source or free models, ChatGPT 3.5, Meta's Llama, etc. And then, yes, they will. Hallucination is a thing. It's not the way these large language models work. They're not synthesizing ideas like we do. They don't understand the world. They're just trying to predict text, DOIs. It knows that DOIs look like 10.1 slash, et cetera, but it's often not going out and finding those. At the same time, there's newer AI technology like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, which is trying to address this problem in which a model queries a database or the web to avoid hallucinations. It's not perfect yet, but people argue it's kind of the future to avoid this hallucination problem. Yeah, someone said, I asked for mesh terms. Many looked good, but they weren't real mesh terms. As a librarian, I can make this distinction, but it worries me that as a doctor or resident, we will take all these terms as correct. Yeah, Joanne, that's an excellent point. And this is something that I think is worth pointing out. Given this hallucination problem, and even ChatGPT or OpenAI, the company that owns ChatGPT, even they admit they are at best 80% accurate. And that depends on which subject area. So that means 20% of the time, and I mean this in a serious sense, it's bullshitting you. It doesn't understand or care whether or not what it's saying it's the truth. It's just trying to predict something that it thinks is likely a human like you wants to see. And so I argue, I don't think these tools are useful for novices in the respective areas, but they might be useful for experts who can vet that information and determine its veracity. But yeah, I think that's a great point. Alex said LLMs are not information retrieval systems. That's it. That's the tweet. Alex could not agree more. This is not Google. And personally, I've seen a lot of students use it as if it were Google, and that's a main concern for me. And part of the reason why I kind of do things like this is it's really important. This is a fundamentally different type of compute, a fundamentally different type of approach, a fundamentally different information landscape we're dealing with here. We're not going out and retrieving known information or vetted information. This model is producing new information. It's generating it, generative AI. And so we need to be cognizant of that, which is why I advocate for using it to like do things like brainstorming or coming up with new terms or new concepts, kind of rolling the dice to create new random ideas rather than rely on it to, say, find journal articles. Leslie asks, any issue with calling false information a hallucination? Yeah, some folks have actually argued to call it a confabulation because a hallucination has a more precise term. Hallucination is just common in the, I guess, discourse of today. Okay, I think we're going to move on. We'll get you. Yeah, perplexity.ai is something that it does. Someone noted perplexity.ai, which is I could just show it actually. This is like a retrieval augmented generation, a RAG AI system where it might say, so you ask it a question, it uses generative AI, but as you see, it provides citations. And then you can click on this, and then it goes to the website, and that cited this, in this case, Johns Hopkins. So in that instance, it was a pretty, I would judge to be a pretty decent source of information. Johns Hopkins is a well-known school, and other times I've experienced it being less than useful. Okay, real quick here, I just want to show everyone how I interacted with it, I guess. I said, I'm working on something. I just arbitrarily picked glaucoma. It gave me this long list. I didn't like it like that, so I asked it to organize it in tabular form. Personally, I just find it organizes information much more easily, and I prefer it typically, so I ask it to do that a lot. And I also asked it to justify what it did. And that sometimes can kind of help you vet that information a little bit more easily. I mean, it gave me age, which is not helpful when I'm trying to search for glaucoma, but I said, hey, don't include things like age, but focus on different type of terms, and then it did it again. So you could see I'm constantly refining the output. This is another way in which it's different from Google. I strongly suggest, as a practical way, if you are interested in interacting with these systems, to continue say, hey, please don't do this, do this instead. It is responsive, and the deeper you go, the better typically the outputs become. Typically, there's no guarantee still yet against hallucination, and some computer scientists still state that hallucination is a problem inherent to these types of computer architectures, and there's no way around it. Alex asks, can you elaborate on the difference between Perplexity using RAG and other systems? Copilot, for example, will still give you citations. Yeah, so even on Hugging Chat, it'll give you the option to like search the web. That's basically just it's a system to help the generative AI system kind of get outside of itself, query something, get a response back, and incorporate that. So in one sense, it's basically given it the ability to search the web or search a database. Now, one can imagine a world in which, so technically it's just really the same model, but you give it a new functionality, you give it a tool. So you could think of it as like kind of like a a baby AI or a helper AI that goes out, retrieves information and pulls it back in. It's really actually kind of a simple Python script. It's not too computationally complex. And so the goal of that is to at least show you where the information that the AI is pulling from. One can imagine a world in which it only pulls from a vetted database of information. That hasn't really worked out yet. For exactly what reasons, I'm not quite clear. But there is a difference, but that is likely going to become bigger and bigger, more and more likely, or a bigger portfolio of generative AI systems will be RAG systems. Right. Is the table proper? As someone asked, is the table properly set up with the header row for screen readers? Leslie, that's an excellent question. My bet is no. My understanding is that these LLM systems, many of which are not screen reader accessible. That might change. That could change tomorrow. But there are very legitimate concerns around this dealing with accessibility, privacy, intellectual property, et cetera. Okay, and then last question. Someone asked, Leela asked, can we attach an Excel file or text file to it? Many systems now take text input, and that it's called a context window, and that window is increasing. So current generation models might be able to take in a 300 to 400 page book, depending. But there are some on the horizon that'll take 10 times that amount. Imagine a 1 hour lecture or 10 hours worth of audio, or 10 300 page books. That is likely to happen in the near future, if not already. So that's a lot. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of back and forth. Thank you for your engagement. And I hope you all continue to compare and contrast different models. I actually think that's helpful because, again, with that jagged frontier, that jagged edge model, you don't know which model will be good with what. And the only way to know or to find a model that's useful is to experiment and explore different models. Okay.
There's a question.
Yes.
How do you feel about hospitals blocking generative AI? In my hospital setting, many of these are blocked, but they allow Bing's AI. I don't think they know yet about Hugging Face. It's not blocked yet. Last week, Claude worked, but today it is blocked.
Well, I think there's serious privacy concerns around that. Personally, you don't want patient-sensitive or patient information or data to be leaked to these models because they can scoop it up potentially. Now, in one sense, it's already kind of been trained on the entire internet and then some. And so any data you plug into it will be relative small potatoes. But there have been instances in which these companies have been hacked and people's queries or people's, prompts have been hacked and stolen from them. So if you provide sensitive information, there's a very real potential in which that could be leaked or hacked. So there is a very serious privacy concern there. So I totally understand the hesitancy around using it in a hospital setting or around with people with access to sensitive information and data. There's also the moral hazard. I'll get off my soapbox in a minute. There's also the moral hazard of, this potentially, imagine the next generation of AI systems. You're tired, you're upset, you're whatever. You have a small kid at home, you're not sleeping. And this new AI system is purported to be super intelligent, superhuman intelligence, could do all this work for you 95% of the time that you've seen it. It does a fantastic job. And there's the potential to rely on that too much is very real, especially as there's some new research coming out, for instance, demonstrating some of the subtle, basically subtle systemic racism that certain models have picked up as a result of the training data. So when you prompt it, I think it was ChatGPT, someone prompted it to rate job applicants. And with job applicants that might have either had Black or African American sounding names or used typical Black or African American vernacular in some parts of the prompt provided, the AI system ranked those applicants lower than others. So, and the likely one, it took a year plus to find this type of subtle racism in these models. And two, we really don't know what the long-term effects of these models are, the subtle issues with them because these companies don't release their training data, they don't release how they were fine-tuned. And so we still don't know a lot about these models. So again, I think I understand the reticence to employ them in specific healthcare settings. Okay, well, that was super engaging and fantastic. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of information. There's a lot, and likely it's going to be impossible for you all to keep up. So I think this is a great time, an excellent time to think through really what are the fundamental principles that are going to be kind of informing your, your library, your personal use, and how you think policy should be developed moving forward as this technology is likely to evolve and change. So we did this, we had a brief discussion. So just a few pro tips. This will be good to keep in mind moving forward for the next activity, etc. Three things I recommend as you use this. One is to give the model a role. So the reason you do that is because these neural networks, if you think they have like billions of these knobs to turn, it'll average out. If you ask it a generic question, it kind of provides an average response. If you tell it to take on a role, you're kind of telling it to focus on a certain part of its neural network architecture, which in theory could, or ideally, lead to a more precise or more interesting answer for you. So I recommend saying, you're in the role of an expert in X with 3 decades of experience reviewing this type of information. Also, if you ask it to think step by step, that kind of slows the model down, and it kind of takes the information it just output previously as like a new starting point. So kind of the longer the chain of logic, the weaker these models tend to perform. And so if you kind of force it to chunk its responses, it can't outputs. That's been demonstrated in the literature. And then lastly, something I like to do is to say, ask for at the very end of your prompt, ask for clarification when needed. So when you're asking the model to provide clarification when you aren't being clear enough. And so sometimes that could be helpful. It might basically help you respond more effectively to the prompt or give more precise information such that the model can provide a more interesting or useful output to you. So those are 3 quick and dirty, easy, the 3 tips I would recommend almost use currently while prompting. Okay, so activity 2 is oftentimes we prompt, like the prompt I provided, a sentence or 2 at a time. And I think that's a missed opportunity to develop more complex prompts. So, and Peace, just to clarify, the prompts are the longer prompts are available to everyone, correct?
Yes, they're in the appendix of the link that I put in the chat.
Fantastic. Okay, so the goal here for the next activity, and again, I'll give everyone about 15 minutes, is to choose one of those prompts. You can choose the smaller prompts, you can choose the big chunky prompts, but the goal is to take a slightly longer prompt, go into a group, agree on whatever prompt you're going to use, and to refine that prompt, to improve on it in some way, shape, or form. And that could just be inserting a sentence here or there, a sentence of instruction, a sentence or 2 of additional detail, etc. Take the output, say, oh, that doesn't quite work, or I would really like it if it did this, put it back into the prompt, see how it does. And the goal is to kind of refine that over time to ideally come out with one really good prompt from your group. And this will be a group activity. We will be breaking you out into rooms. So at the end of this, your group will have one hopefully pretty refined, pretty good prompt, and this will be kind of an exercise in how to take a good prompt and make it even better, and to demonstrate why making a longer prompt potentially could be more useful for you. Okay, fantastic. Okay, all right, everyone. We're gonna wrap up. We only have 15 minutes left. Time has gone by so quickly. I'm super curious, what went well, what surprised you? Do you have the main takeaway? throw that in the chat if you would. I'm super curious what you all think about how that process went. And I think it's totally valid to say that was awful, or it was less useful than I anticipated, or I learned something interesting about prompt engineering. I'd love to hear about anything and everything you found to be noteworthy or interesting. Looks like Liz used it to create rubrics for activities. So that's interesting. Group A started to look at how to export useful information in a form we can make use. GPT struggles with tables. I wasn't aware so much of that. That's very possible. Claude was annoying and then I kept on asking questions. Yep, the group I also had that problem. I actually just said make up something so we can move forward. So it said that ChatGPT is way better than the free version. That's generally been my experience, which is unfortunate. Different results from this, some more detailed than others. That's interesting. Glad you found out. It makes sense insofar as how these models work that you got different results because of the way neural networks work. It's probabilistic. It just gives you what it likely thinks is the right answer. I think I would prefer the back and forth between prompter and AI feels more like an actual brainstorming session. Maybe that's a really useful way. Maybe in trying to get useful information out of it, maybe that's what helps refine your own thinking. I think that's a really interesting potential use case. Steps help deliver more relevant useful outputs. That's fantastic. Again, there's no guarantee. This might change. We don't know how these models are going to act over time. I just heard on shorter responses in the month of May than it was in November. And one computer scientist thinks it's because it's internalized time and people don't write as much in the summer than it does in the winter months. I don't know. These models are bizarre. Yeah, asking up follow-up questions. I think that telling the bot to ask follow-up questions might be just like one of the better tips or tricks to use. And maybe more folks should check out perplexity.ai. In my experience, it hasn't been super great, but it might be improving all the time. Who knows? Okay, so I'm going to move on. We'll have time for Q&A just real quick. Again, you'll have access to these slides. The AI news is moving so quickly. And so I've kind of changed to learn more about artificial intelligence technologies. I've switched to Substack, which is just a fancy email subscription model. These are all free. The second one is Gary Marcus. He's a great critic of AI. The first one is Ethan Mollick, who's more of an optimist about AI. So they kind of balance each other out. And the last two are just kind of cover new AI tools that are coming to the market, which include like systematic review AIs. There's different things for prompt engineering. The second one, you need a paid Claude account, but it helps you write a really, really good prompt, like 500 words. And the first one, the first website is free. It takes a day to like register, and it kind of uses the Tracy structured prompting model, which is a different type of prompt engineering technique where it's like giving it a role, but you give it a purpose and a whatever, it's like TRACY activity or something like that. So that's free, and that's a kind of a pretty convenient and easy way to use an AI system to help you create better prompts for other AI systems. You can also create your own AIs nowadays as well. The last one, for instance, lets you use a large language model locally on your computer, so that way you kind of avoid usage limits, and you avoid needing an internet. And there's some great YouTube series. I should have made these prettier in hindsight, but there's some excellent YouTube videos out there that explain what large language models are, how transformers work, why is it that you get different responses from the same prompt, why are they called token limits, not word limits or character limits? Why are they called token limits? If you answer that, you understand something fundamental in technology. So I like these. I mean, 30 minutes, you can get way more informed than most people on this technology. And it kind of helps view how you approach utilizing these systems. Okay, so that's all the content all the things I have. I wanted to leave at least 10 minutes for Q&A. I can stick around late, but are there any burning questions, comments, concerns? I'd love to hear from you all. I'd love to respond, help you think through this. Do you have questions about the prompts you made? Are you seeking for recommendations?
It looks like there's a question. How do you educate people in your organization about AI, but hit a good balance between keeping people excited about using AI, but at the same time emphasizing the real problems and biasing factors that come with using AI?
Excellent question. I'm not sure if I'm trying to get people excited about AI per se. My thinking is I try to get them thinking it from a more sophisticated perspective. So acknowledging that this is a different algorithmic technology than, say, Google, acknowledge the socioeconomic or sociocultural, economic, ethical considerations here. There's policy, there's privacy, there's security, accessibility. Really, for me, it's about bringing the different perspectives to the table. And in fact, if we want explainable AI, then it take a village. And we're all going to need to be at the table to provide our feedback. And especially like academic library values, I think are of particular values of privacy, of open access, et cetera. I think all are useful to bring to bear on discussions about AI. So I guess I just try to elicit the variety of different problems and challenges, but also opportunities. I think you can't talk about the opportunities without the costs, and vice versa. So for me, that's how I approach it. I don't discuss a benefit without discussing a likely cost, be it environmental or access or privacy, et cetera.
Question, for AI on your machine, how much do you trust that this option doesn't just copy everything and send it back to the AI provider? I'm assuming that's an issue, just haven't looked into it yet, and I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, because you could just turn off Wi-Fi and still use the system. That's how you would know. Could there be some extraordinary way in which that still leaks? I'm assuming so, or something like via Bluetooth, maybe, if Amazon really wanted to go nuts, like it did with its doorbells. I don't know if y'all heard about this. I think it was Amazon. Like data was being stolen from Ring doorbells or from doorbells via Bluetooth or something like that. Yeah, I would just say if you turn off Wi-Fi, that would be my way to know. But there's no way to guarantee.
Thank you. In your experience, are students more knowledgeable or higher users of AI than faculty? And do you find that they use it but don't know how it works?
Yes, they're 3 to 4, from what I saw, I don't know, a couple months ago, they're 3 to 4 times more likely to use it than instructors are. Anecdotally, I think they use it just like Google, and it drives me through the wall. It drives me nuts. For me, they fundamentally don't understand the nature of the technology. They don't understand how it's probabilistic. They don't understand why it's different than, say, Google. And so they're using it in a similar way, which is a huge problem. But that being said, I do know students who say it's not reliable, it's not trustworthy, therefore I don't use it. I also would push back against the idea that this is the future, this is going to take off like a rocket ship. It's possible that these models run out of data to train on, and they plateau in ability. Some computer scientists, some models right now are being trained on what's called synthetic data, which is data produced by an AI. So an AI that's trying to create, the equivalent of another internet, and then you take that AI output and you train another model on it, but that hasn't been shown to be effective. So in my experience, they are using it more than instructors and likely more than us, but they're not using it in sophisticated ways because they're not educating themselves on how to use it well.
Time-saving tech like dishwashers lead the public, usually men, to believe workload will decrease when it often leads to an increase in work, usually for women. How or do you see this as the future of generative AI as well?
Yeah, totally get that. Email was like that, right? Like email productivity didn't drastically increase as a result of email or the internet, as was projected prior to those. The internet was supposed to be this huge democratizing force. You could argue it was, but you could also argue, what is it reduced to now? A handful of companies that dominate the market, a lack of innovation. There hasn't been something like an iPhone that's come out and revolutionized the internet or the big tech companies in a while, rather than just like another bigger iPad type of thing. So yeah, I think that's a very fair question, and especially on top of it, if it hallucinates, if it's not reliable, if it's not trustworthy, if it's not explainable, if you don't know why, computer scientists still don't know with these models why they output certain things. We understand the math, but we don't understand how the model uses that math. So that's all to be said. The future is uncertain. Again, like the performance could plateau. This could be, there's noted hype cycles around AI, where they call them ice ages and hype cycles, where AI makes all these big promises, all this funding goes into it, and then it craps out. Same thing happened with, this is a form of supervised learning with reinforcement learning with human feedback. That's what these large language models, like 10, 15 years ago, it was all unsupervised learning was the big thing. That's when humans started losing in chess and Go in particular. So who's to say? And I think we all have a say in how this AI technology develops. And I think we all should be at the table for what AI technology we develop. You know, the AI technologies of today don't need to be the AI technologies of tomorrow. And I think we all are responsible as educators, as information professionals, to educate ourselves and the next generation, who will be creating the next generation of AI systems, which will make these maybe look like tiddlywinks. So there's a real opportunity for us to have input and to make the world a better place through our values, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was an engaging, excellent session. Thank you to everyone who participated. I know it was like new to a lot of people, and we're really grateful for that and your engagement. We also look forward to seeing you next week at our final session. So have a great day, have a great week, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.